Okay, just a moment. Let me just. All right, so the video is recorded. Just I haven't. It's not really that productive. Just a moment. So please join. Okay, here we go. All right, so this is the the code. Right, please sign in. We shall start with the revision soon. And today I'm going to focus more on the second part, which is your part B on the coding aspects, right? So the kind of questions that can be asked for your part 2. Okay, so part 1 I think is straightforward. It's just part 2. A lot of people are basically worried about what will be the questions and what are the things that you need to do, right? Okay. Right. So I'll demonstrate that using Visual Studio Code. Don't worry. Okay. And then you should be able to visualize it shortly. Okay. So let's close all the things first. Sorry about this thing. Okay, here we go. Yeah. So attendance is online. If you want to get the code, you have to basically go online for this one. But what I'll do is I'll just share it with all of you, right? Okay, I don't have the. Okay, so yeah, I'll just take this over.
Sir, may I ask questions? Please.
Just a moment, okay, just a moment.
All right, so for the study pack, we just have to look through the study pack. We just need to read through that for the exams, right? Not what about the tutorials and lectures section?
Which one?
The tutorials and lectures, the
Tutorials, I mentioned that there are some tutorials that are important, especially the last few tutorials, because the last few tutorials, like for example, number 8, number 9 on your let's say binary files and so on. So those are the more important ones because they give you a variety of options where you can use the binary files, right? And some of you may actually have used that in your assignment. All right. So like for example, let's say your object input stream, object output streams, all those are samples that are useful, right? So some of the useful samples are given there, right? So you might want to look at the tutorial just to get a flavor of what kind of questions can be asked for mostly theory, right? So that part will be theory. And for the coding part, of course, I will highlight it shortly. So, but you don't have to worry that much about the coding part. I will tell you what kind of possible question types that will be given. All right. So by using Visual Studio Code, I'll show you how you can approach that type of questions. Okay. All right. Okay. Right. So just a moment. So we will start this revision shortly. Okay. My mouse is missing. Can't see it on the screen. Yeah, okay now. Okay, right. So if everyone's here and ready, then we can start the revision. Right. So I posted the code in your WhatsApp group. Okay. All right. So right. So if you're ready, let's have a look at some of the example questions. Okay. So I'll just type the questions in the next box. Right. Okay. So okay. Let's have a look at what are the possible type of questions for your part B. Okay. So your part B will be something like this. Okay, let me just grab my screen back. Sometimes my mouse doesn't go back. Okay. All right. Okay, so here we go. All right. So let's start with a new project. Again, don't worry. This is just going to be because we want to show for example, for Visual Studio Code, right? So okay, so I'll use a simple architecture type first. Whether it's glue on or whichever, that one should be okay. But I want a simple version of it. Okay. Where is the simple version? That's a moment. Okay, I saw it there. It's here. Okay. So here we go. Now, as usual, you need to have a folder, right? So this will be in your documents. All right. So change project name. Let's call it as revision. Okay. And let's draw our folder. Oh, there's another one. Right. So change the name again. Revision. Oh. All right. Just a moment. I think for those who are using your mic, can you just off your mic for the time being?
Oh, sorry, sir.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that there is no background noise. All right. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So, and as usual, we need to basically answer to all these prompts. And once you're ready, then part one. Where's my mouse? Okay. Here we go. Right. So for the hand ups, as I mentioned to you guys, right, if you're using Maven and so on for the project manager, you might have this type of files like pom.xml and so on that you need to include, right? Not just the source folder, you will need to include source module info because that will dictate what will be imported, right? As well as this pom.xml that tells the project manager what kind of libraries you want to download, right? So if you don't include this and your code doesn't compile, you might have some difficulties, right? And especially for my side, right? So if I don't see this, then I will not be able to give the required marks on some of the topics, right? Some of the things that you are supposed to get, right? Okay, so here we go. So this is an example, right, of Java FX code. And some of the possible questions will be like the following. Let's say if you are given a Java FX application with a button, all right, and your button is called, okay, like for example here, okay, so I'll just use this part to illustrate. Like for example, if it requires you to, let's say, write, okay, the code snippet to add an event handler that will update the label. Okay, we have a label here, right? To click when, okay, let's say when a button called a button, or we call it as button 1, is pressed. Okay, so this is the question. How do you write that code itself? Okay, so to write the code, of course, you don't have to write the entire line like this. Okay, so assuming that you've already got a label declared, right? So your coding will be from here to here only. Okay, you don't even have to write the set stage or whatsoever. You are just required to write the event handler, and then for items that have not been let's say declared, you might have to declare them. Like for example, over here, you would have to just say button 1, and this will be a new instance of button. Okay, and then your button should have some wording. Okay, so the button you have to just depending on the question. If the question has already given you some label, like for example, click me, then you just say click me, something like that. Okay, and then your button 1 needs to be used. Okay, button 1 over here. How do we actually add the event handler? Still remember the set on action? Okay, set on action. This is the one that we have learned before. All right. So, and then you need to basically set the action. And the code is very short. In fact, you notice that when you want to write set on action, you have a few options, right? The first option is to use a so-called inline event handler. And you just declare inline event handler, new event handler. And then the type of data that you will handle will be the action event, followed by event handler body, right? So don't forget that this will have to be below, right? And then the event handler body will be enclosed in a curly brace, okay? And then, right, you need to basically import the event handler also, okay, in JavaFX.event, right? So that's because we need to use them, right? And also for your action event, right? And then what else is required here? So you need to also, for the case of event handler, we need to actually implement like what is shown here, right? So you need to actually implement what we call as a method called handle, all right? So over here it mentions that you have not implemented an abstract method, right? Okay, so that abstract method is called handler. And hence we have to just say over here, public void handle. So this is the old version. Okay, a lot of people will be scared of writing this one because it is a bit hard on you to memorize all the things, right? Action event E, for example, and then that will be the code. And then for you to actually update the label is already declared here. So you just say label dot set text, okay? And then to set text, all we have to do is just set the text to something. Okay, so over here we're going to set the text to I'm click. Okay, right. So here it says click, and you're done. Okay, and then some people will be asking, do I have to actually add the? Okay, so here when you declare all these things, you need to actually add them to your scene before you can actually use them, right? So you notice that the scene you have only added stack pane with label, and then if I want to add in more items, can I actually add in additional nodes? Yes, you can, but the only thing is the declaration will be different. Okay, here you would have to actually use a new stack pane and then use add should over here because it's declared as one line, right? So sorry about that. I will have to change this to something else. All right, so you just focus on the part where you need to answer. Okay, don't worry about the one on top. Okay, so this will be the answer section that you need to focus on. All right, and since it asks for a code snippet, okay, code snippet, you don't have to include the top or bottom, assuming that the code for the top and bottom would have been declared. So, like for example, we will declare a new stack pane. Okay, stack pane S is a new stack pane, and then we will need to actually do the following: S dot. Okay, this can be done later. Don't worry. Okay, so we will put this down further. Okay, just to make it easy for you, right? You don't actually have to code anything that is not here, right? And then we are going to add the stack pane here. And before that, you are going to add all the items, okay? So then we have declared the stack pane as dot get children dot add all. We're going to add two of the elements. One is your label, the other one is the button. Okay, typo. Oh. Okay. And that should be how you write your code. And because the question doesn't actually require you to actually write everything, right? So it's already here. And your coding will just be from, okay, assuming that these are all given already, you don't actually have to code this part below, right? So the one that's above only. The part below, you don't have to. So the code will be just this one. Okay. So to create an event handler, question to create an event handler will require you to just write, like for example, button.setOnAction, and then you create a new event handler that works on this particular data type that is called action event. And then inside you implement a handle. And the handle event just basically produces this one, okay? Label.setText to click, okay? So when you run your application, something missing here, sorry about that. Com.example example is not found, okay? Am I using any com.example example here? Yep, we are using com.example, but why is it not found here? So just a moment. Okay, com.example is done. Okay, let me just debug it again. In the boot layer, what happens here? Okay, invalid module descriptor. We have already included that one. Yeah, so packaged com.example is here. Right, so why is it not running? I'm not sure. Okay, let me just see what's wrong with it. Let's check the launch. Maybe it's because of the launch file that doesn't actually have a library, right? So over here, there's no library for this thing to run. So therefore, okay. And I'll have to point it to somewhere with a VM arguments, right? So, okay. So the easiest way, of course, just a moment, I'll need to basically grab it from sample code, right? So that you don't have to actually memorize all the Right, so for the part where we need to use fx, not this one. All right, so in normal coding, of course, you're going to face with a lot of problems like this, right? So including, let's say, the chances of getting into things like this, where you are required to, this is NetBeans, okay, so sorry about this one. Do I have any samples that uses fx? Yeah, so then you need to have these settings.xml. But strange enough, okay, most of them doesn't require this particular VM arguments, right? But if let's say you get something like that, it will probably be because of the VM arguments is not running, okay? Right, by right, it should be everything ready, all right? But what I'll do is I'll just cut this one, put it on top again, and see whether it works for this one, right? So we have the override, app, stage dot add. We miss out any decoding, right? So is it complete? Let's check our code here. This one closes the start, okay? And stage.show is used. And why is the stage being highlighted? Oh, it says stage to cause transitive, okay, whatever that is. Okay. Okay, sometimes it works pretty strangely. The example is still not found. Strange. Okay, never mind. Let's just ignore this part because sometimes I may have actually changed some of the settings, and then you notice that the setting comes back and haunts you. All right. Okay. So the most important thing is that your code should have something like this. So this part, if it's a bit difficult to write, all you have to do is just write it in another manner. Okay, sorry. So you might just declare a button 2, which has something like this. And then the easiest way we have learned so far to actually implement our set on action, okay, is the following. You just need to put the action event over here. Event handler will be inside your curly brace, right? So this will be using a lambda expression, and the text that you need to put inside that particular handler will be just as short as this one, okay? So this is the one that we are expected to write. In fact, the coding is just about 3 to 4 lines, okay, for this type of question. And the question requires you to basically write code snippet to add an event handler, right? So if it is in this case, JavaFX event handler, then it will look like the following. So what about, let's say, for non-JavaFX, of course, then we will basically implement that using a different approach instead of using this so-called event handler here. So for that, you will be using, okay, so if you are going to write an event handler for that one, then the event handler should be, okay, you are going to basically set on action, not set on action, okay? So your action event needs to be created separately. That one I'll show you later, okay? So first one, I think this type of question, okay, will be possible. Write a code snippet to add an event handler, okay? And then the next question, okay? So for the next question, you might be having something like the following. Okay, so if let's say you have actually written event handler before, right? Okay, and where is this? I have something that I don't want to use, right? So therefore, I should be removing this file. Okay. In my app.java, I will just remove this. Okay, just to make it simple. But if it still doesn't compile, then okay. So this is the click me button. When you click, it will say click me. Okay, and right. So your event handler should be something like this that you added in, and then you change to click after you click the button. Okay, so then the label will be changed. But if you want to change also the button's text, then this will be button 1.set because you're using a stack pane, right? So therefore you can't see it. Set text, and then this will be click. All right. So it's basically a coding problem just now. Okay. So here the click me, when you click, it says click. All right. But anyway, the text behind the stack pane, right? You notice that it's stacked together, and that's why you don't see it because it's behind. All right. Now it becomes clicked. Right. So this one you won't be able to see because the label is actually placed together. Right. Based on our coding here, you notice that the label is placed together with your button in this case. All right. So any questions about this? Hopefully you get the idea about how to actually write the code. You don't actually have to write the entire thing. Okay, just this part only. Right. So you don't have to actually go and start with import this and that. No. Right. When it says code snippet, it expects you to write the one that is here only. Right. Or this one. So either way, right? Either or, because set on action can be used with the traditional event handler class definition, or you can just use E, right? The lambda expression to set this button to an event handler. All right. Okay, so that's the first part. And how about the second question on, okay, the second one will be, let's say if you are given a method, right? So what I'll do is I'll create another class file, right? And I'll call this as, okay, exception handling. Okay, so we are supposed to write some methods with exception. Okay, methods with exception class. Okay, and then say that you also have a public static void main, right? Just for convenience. Right. Okay, and anything? Anything? Okay. Right. So any questions? I heard somebody speaking. Right. Okay. So this type of question, okay, let me just type the question format again. So the second type of question will be, let's say, for exception handling. So for exception handling, let's say you're given that, let's say, given that method called method, let's say method 1 throws an exception, an IO exception, for example, an IO exception. Right. So then write the skeleton of the method of method 1. Okay. The skeleton of method 1. So this is a method, and assuming that the method has no input and output parameters. Okay, so then how do you actually write that? Of course, it requires you to write a method, right? Method 1. So with that, of course, the logical thing to do is, of course, to write the method. So to start, of course, you will start by writing public void, and then the name of this method is called method 1, right? Method 1 with no input output parameter. And then don't forget that you need to have the body, right? Okay. And on top of that, what do we need to have? It says it actually is able to throw exception, right? So what exception will be thrown? What exception will be thrown? So it has a throws keyword. Remember that this is throws, okay? Throws IO exception, okay? And that is what you need to write. That is the skeleton, okay? And then after the skeleton, how do you actually, okay? So the first part is write the skeleton of method 1. So this is skeleton of method 1, okay? That's just the skeleton. And then if let's say the question continue to ask, okay? The second part, if let's say it says you need to actually implement try catch block. Okay. A typo here. So implement a try catch block for, let's say, for checking, or let's say trapping errors when you use method 1 in your main method. Okay, so if that's the case, then how do we actually use that? So that should be the second part, right? So to simplify things, I'll just make it shorter. So over here, in order to use it, you need to code inside your main method, right? So in the main method, of course, you will have to have a try catch, okay? Try, and then what do we catch? We are going to catch IO exception, right? Then that's it, right? And then your IO exception needs to be declared somewhere, right? And how do we declare them? Okay, so of course you need to actually have somewhere that you can actually throw, right? So then we call method 1. Okay, and then take note that your method 1, since this is inside a class, you will have to make it static. Okay, then you'll be able to call method 1 like this. Okay, is that okay? So hopefully you get the idea. Sometimes a static keyword is required because you are not using a class dot method 1 here, right? So if you want, you could have actually called as methods with exception dot method 1, right? But or you basically start by instantiating an instance of method with exception before you use method 1. But if you want to use it immediately, just one copy of that method, then this will be public static. Okay, then you're done. And just to show you that it works, let's say over here we say throw new IO exception, and that IO exception you may want to actually throw it with a number of parameters that you can pass in. Okay, throwable cost or string message. Okay, so you say this is thrown from method 1. Okay, so there you go. Then this will allow you to actually immediately throw, and once you capture it, then you can just do a e dot, okay, a message. All right. So once you run this, what's the expected output then? Okay, so let's have a look at it. Right. So when you throw a new IO exception, then the E part will capture the IO exception, right? And then if you want to actually show the text of, obviously, it will be system.out.println E dot. Okay, we want the entire stack, okay? So then we will get the stack trace from here. So some people will be asking, is this really necessary? Not really necessary, but you need to actually have the catch statement correctly. Okay, so here it will catch, and then it will just show the stack trace, something like that. Okay, then that should be okay. All right. So remember, the try block must have a call to your method 1, and then the catch must capture your IO exception that you throw out. Okay, right? So hopefully you get the idea. So this is just one example of a try catch exception handling program that you may be asked to write. Okay, and then the next example that I want to share with you, of course, will be, right, just a moment. Okay, you guys have already used many times, right? Many times you have already used the Java collections framework. So let's create another class file called the JCF example. Right? So then inside this JCF examples, assume that you have already got some of the things. Like let's say we want to use array list, and then in your, say over here, we put in a public static void main also, just to simplify things, okay? Take note that if you write it this way, it's not wrong, okay? The arguments can actually be something like this, string array or arguments array, right? Okay, and here, let's assume that you want to use a hash set, for example, okay? Hash set, okay? And then we declare hash set of type string. This is called HS, is new instance of your set. Okay, and then if I want to add the elements of the hash set, what do? I will use the keyword add, right? And then let's say I added a few of them: Alice, Bob, Charlie. Okay, so these are the common names that we tend to use even for computer security, right? So samples will be using the keyword like Alice, Bob, Charlie, and so on. Okay. All right. So say that you have already got a list with the following items. Okay. Given that this is the case, so if you want to actually print the value, okay, write the code to print the individual values, okay, or individual elements in HS. So is it difficult? How do we actually do that? You have remembered the part where we did the for loop, right? So the conventional way, what do? Using conventional way, we would normally use, like, let's say the for, right? Okay, and then the for loop, you can actually initialize with some values before you proceed, right? And what are the things that we need to actually initialize? So over here, in order to actually use that particular hash set, you will need to probably start by using an iterator for your, okay, for iterator I that takes your list iterator. In this case, this is not a list, a set iterator from, okay, and this will have to be imported as usual, right? When you actually write the code, okay, so this is the first part, right? Iterator I is assigned hs.iterator. We are getting an iterator instance. As long as I.has next, then we proceed, okay? So that's the conventional way, because this conventional way is a bit difficult to write. So then we have the string, okay? In this case is obtained from I.next. So when you use I.next, it takes the next element. So obviously, right? And let me just see. Okay, over here we have to use I dot. Next will be an object, right? So over here, if you say I dot next, sometimes it doesn't actually print, right? So to simplify it, I don't want to actually do a casting and so on. So I just do system.out.println I dot next. So that solves the problem of having to cast it to string. Okay, so this I is actually an object that you obtain, right? Okay, and then next, this will allow you to actually print the content, all right? So when you run this app, of course, you will be able to actually see the output. Okay. Bob, Alice, Charlie. Why Bob, Alice, Charlie then? Take note that this is actually a hash set, right? So it automatically arranges the item, okay, accordingly, in a set format, okay. And this is the first type of loop, right? Using the iterator here, right? And for some, this may be a bit too cumbersome, right? Too troublesome. Take note that for hash set, do we have index? Okay. Do we have an index for hash set? Right. So the one that we have an index will be like, for example, array list. Okay. Array list, you can use index, but if you have a hash set, you don't have an index. So how do we actually make use of the advanced for loop in this case? If you want to use advanced for loop, so this is an acceptable answer, just 3 lines of code, right? So the easier coding, in fact, if you want to write a simpler method, because this will be for each string as inside your hash set dot. Okay, so of course, inside your hash set, you could have actually used it this way, right? So hash set of type string, right? So the type is already known. So then we say for each element of type string in hash set, then we are going to just print, okay, the S value, right? System.out.println. So compare these two. Of course, we know that the second method is more efficient, right? Because the coding is shorter using an advanced for loop, right? And then over here, we are just using system.out.println bracket S. In your exam, of course, it's not wrong to actually use a shorter code, right? So if you want to save time, obviously, we will basically try to use a shorter code for that. Okay, so if you try this both methods running, you notice that the result that you get will be the same. Okay, Bob, Alice, Charlie, Bob, Alice, Charlie, repeated twice, right? And then the sorting of your Alice, Bob, Charlie will be, of course, based on, okay, what criteria? Okay, this is a hash set, right? So it needs to be unique. And then if you try to actually add things twice, it will not add twice, okay? If you try to do something like this, only once, okay? Just for information. Right, so that will be some of the demo that I need to show to you. So one of the possible questions in your final exam will be to write, okay, a code that prints individual element inside your, whether it is list, set, okay, or queue or map, right? List, set, queue, map, that will be the possible ones. How to access the individual elements. So you might be required to basically print the element. The easiest, of course, is to print the element, okay? And then some of the questions may require you to actually write something even more advanced than that. But usually in final exam, we don't give you such a difficult question, okay? Exception handling is, of course, one of the possible questions, okay? And then our traditional question will be event handler, right? So this will be the first type of question that I mentioned to you that is possible, all right? Remember that? And then, of course, there will be also one more, right? So this part will be a bit more difficult, but not to say very hard, right? So you might be required to write a code for, let's say, reading or writing binary file, okay? So I hope you still remember how to read and write your binary file. Okay, so for that one, you should be reading your. Okay, so what I'll do is I will create a so-called binary files class. Okay, so for that, you need to basically get this from your tutorial. Okay, so in your tutorial, if you go to your tutorial 8 or tutorial 9, I think that's the chapter that covers this particular topic well. All right, so remember that there are some parts in the tutorial that you may need to refer to, but normally what you need to refer to will be the last few topics, right? The last few topics in your lecture, okay? So if you look at your tutorials, of course, the tutorials will give you some example code, right? And I think tutorial 8 is on binary file I/O. Tutorial 9 is on random access files and I/O streams, right? So say that, okay, if the question requires you to write to a random access file or write to, let's say, non-random access file, we will try to look at some of the examples. Okay, so let me just go back again. Sorry about this. Okay, so I may want to just start with binary files. Okay, these are the more possible ones. Okay, so say that you are required to write an output. Okay, let us just type out the question here. So if let's say the question requires you to write a simple code to read or to copy a binary file, right, to another file. Okay, let's say copy a binary file called input.dat to another file called output.dat. Okay, so this is a simple code, right? But it requires you to write something like that. Okay, so how do we actually do that? In your public static void main program, right? So this is your main method. And how do we actually code it? First thing, we need to actually open up a try resource block. Okay, so why? Because you are going to actually access a file. So a file opening, of course, you need to have the so-called primary resource. So this is the safest way. In fact, if let's say you're going to use, okay, using, let's say, file input output stream, okay, file output stream. So this is a more difficult question because you have input and output stream, right? Okay, so then what should we put here? The first thing that we need to open, of course, will be the file input stream, right? File input stream, and then call this as FIS for file input stream. Then this will be a new instance of file input stream. And I'm going to open the source file. What is the source file name? Input.dat, right? Input.dat. So that's the first way. And don't forget, of course, in your coding, you need to actually import all those things. If not, then errors will come out, okay? So then in your try catch, of course, you are going to catch IO exception, okay? Whether you handle it or not, that's fine. Okay, so that you need to import as well. So inside your file input stream, once you get the file input stream, then we are supposed to write to the file output stream, right? So the file output stream also needs to be declared. New file output stream. And this will be the destination name, and the destination name is output.dat. Okay, so then how do we actually write the content? The content can be written for as long as there are data, right? So one way is to actually initialize, okay, the individual bytes as integer data, and then while the data is small letter y, okay, small letter y. In this case, the data can be read from your file input stream. Then we would proceed, okay? So the data that you read is not equal to -1. -1 means end of file anyway, right? So for as long as this is true, then you're going to proceed, okay? And then what should we do? File output stream dot write in this case, and then you're going to write the data. Okay, so that will be the basic skeleton of this particular method. Okay, so it's something like this. The coding that you have to write for the file input output stream will be this part, the try catch block. Right, it looks a bit long, but anyway, marks are awarded for each and every individual parts that you have actually created. So first, of course, will be the file input stream. And then some people will be writing it in such a way that, is that okay? If I were to put the file output stream also here, well, it is okay, right? Remember that you can actually have more than one of those so-called I/O, right? So this is try with I/O. You can have more than one lines here. So then it will open up the file, and then it will start to copy the content from one to another, right? But because we don't have any files here with that name, so when you try to run this application, of course, it will fail, right? Because the file is not there, right? But you don't see the error because there's a catch here, right? Okay. So there's a catch exception here. So if you try to print out the exception using a stack trace, then you should be able to see the output. Okay. Or the easiest way is e.print stack trace. Okay. E.print stack trace. This will be the easiest way. There you go. It says found not found, right? Okay. Now find the file. So the rest should be okay, right? And you can actually write it this way using try with resource with 2 lines. That means there are 2 streams that you use, the 2 file opening streams over here. One is for input, the other one for output, right? So I hope you get the idea. This is also another type of possible questions. So is the question long? You don't even have to write the public static void main, okay? Remember that we are asking you to write only the code inside, right? So write a simple code. As long as you have this part, you get the grade, okay? Remember that. Okay, so any questions on this part? Hopefully you get the idea about the type of questions that can be asked. All right. Okay. Right. And some people will say, okay, to be safe, some people would still write all these things. And if you have a skeleton, then I can give you mark. In case if you make some mistakes here and there, I can still give you extra marks on your import statements or whatever. But is it really a must? Not really necessary. But as long as you have that, then it's okay, right? So as long as you have that, you will have a chance to get marks just in case if your other parts are wrong. Okay, like for example, your output stream is wrong, but you have all your other things that I can award you with marks. Remember that in the exam, right, we are looking for evidence to award you marks. So try to write as complete as possible, right? So this question also, this answer also is not a long answer, right? You notice that when you write this program, is it very long? No, right? It's so short only, right? So including comments, about 20 lines only, right? About 20 lines only. And in fact, I've actually have a lot of blank lines, right? So therefore, this code is actually a short one. Short and concise. The question will be short and concise also. All right. So do you have any questions about the format? So I hope you have actually seen the format here. All right. Any question? Okay, someone.
Sir, could you please open the attendance code again?
Okay, just a moment.
So will this be posted on the...
What's that? Sorry?
Will this be posted on the Times recording?
Yes, it will be. It will be. Don't worry. Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, the code is 4VVKDE. Right? So 4VVKDE is the code. Is the code. Right? Any questions so far? Right, so hopefully you get the idea about the type of questions that may come out. So part B is just as simple as this one, right? You don't have to write a very long code, okay? So it's unlike in your, let's say, OOP, where you have to write the data structures, okay, or whatever that is associated, okay? Like if you have studied about data structures, the question may require you to write a long code, right? In terms of defining the structures and so on. But in our case, it's usage, okay? So you just need to know how to use them and just write a short code like this, okay? So once you have the short code, then everything should be okay. is as short as probably no more than 20 lines, right? That is including the spaces, okay? And there's no need to include the package, okay? Remember, the package name is not required, okay, in your final exam. And in fact, it's only required for your coding when you're actually creating, let's say, a full project like this. Then you need the package name. But else, you don't need that, okay? Any questions so far? Right, so that will be some examples to show you write a simple code to copy a binary file called input the data to another file called output the data using file input stream and file output stream. So this question, of course, is a long question. It probably worth about 8 marks to 10 marks, okay, for this type of questions, okay, 8 marks maybe, right? And if let's say the question requires you to write other methods, like for example, let's say your object input stream or object output stream is similar to file input stream and output stream. It's just the definition part will be slightly different, okay? And then the rest, the usage, everything will look about the same, okay? And if let's say the question asks you to write random access file, okay, hopefully you guys don't have to go for receipt, okay? So the receipt question is much harder, right? Whereas the final question, I think, is pretty straightforward, okay? So something like this only, right? And okay, for this part, okay, just to cater for the variation, right? That means the question variation, you might want to look at tutorial 8 and 9, okay? Get to know the format, okay? Tutorial 8 and 9, this will help you, okay? So like in our previous week, right? So we have actually mentioned about the question format. So this is the question format anyway, right? Not too hard, right? So you are required to just write a short code like this, right? And of course, including the classes, right? So this will be including the classes. It's not a long question, okay? It's not a long question, not a long answer as well, okay? Up to here only, right? Without a package, right? Okay, so any questions about this? So hopefully you are aware of it.
Excuse me, sir. I have a...
Yeah. Okay. Anything that you want to ask?
Yeah, sir. I have 2 questions.
The paper, okay. The paper is 60 marks. Part A, 30%, and part B, 30%. Right? So total 60%. Right? Question, sorry. Right, please ask.
Oh, yeah. Sir, the first question is that just now in the hash map, can we traverse the value by the lambda expression that I sent in our chatting box just now? Can I using that format to traverse the elements in the hash map?
Oh, this is J-frame. What was that? Just so many questions here.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go through the questions shortly. Okay, one by one.
Okay.
I didn't expect so many questions here also, but never mind. Let's open up the chat box here. Right. Okay. And right, the first one. We'll go from top down.
Yeah, sure, that one. Hujiawei, me.
Okay, Hujiawei, right? So hold on. So for attendance code, okay, done already. Partial marks if you don't finish the code or have an error, yes, you will get partial marks. And what can the question look like for framework? Okay, Java collections framework, right? You mean? Just now I've shown you the example, right? Okay, so then for each, yes, you can use for each, no problem, right? So that is the one that we have actually studied before, right? In our examples, there are 4 ways you can do that using the conventional index, right? Conventional indexing, in fact, you need to know the number of elements before you can actually scroll through them, and that could probably be only applicable to array list, for example, right? And this one is actually useful for all, right? HS for each, and then you can use lambda expression system.out.println bracket E, that is acceptable, Okay, this one is acceptable. Okay.
Okay, got it, sir.
So as long as it's a valid format, yes.
Okay.
Then
second question is that for the event handling, because in the study pack there are two. One is the JavaFX event handling, and the other is the Java Swings event handling.
AWT, yes.
So we all need to study and prepare about it, or just optional. Like study JavaFX is enough. Do not need to study about Java Swings event handler.
Well, basically, I cannot review too much, right? But it's either Java FX or Java Swing, right? So let me just go through the study pack with you guys. Okay, I will basically show you the study pack here, right? Okay, here we go. Study pack is okay. My screen, my mouse. Where is my mouse? I have multiple monitors here, so it's actually hidden somewhere. Okay, here we go. And I'll grab this over. Yeah, okay. So if you look at the study pack, right? Okay, so where's the study pack on the revision? Okay. So if you have a look at the summary for JavaFX Swing AWT, right? Okay, so if we are talking about event handling, then these are the two files that you can look at. And okay, let me, again, it goes to another screen that I have to basically bring back here. Okay, so this is your Swing and AWT event handling. The top part you don't have to study. The one that we are more concerned about will be the coding style, right? So the coding style is the more important one that you probably have to look at. And some examples are given here, right? So this is for Swing AWT. And you notice that the button definition, of course, is here, right? And then you see you add action listener to this, and then you have to basically write the action perform class, right? And your class have to implement action listener. So this one is a bit cumbersome because then you have to write the entire class. So the easier way, in fact, if you look at it, is to use the Lambda expression way. Okay, so instead of writing all those long answers here, you could have used the same method like add action listener e dash, right? So remember that add action listener bracket e dash, and then the thing they want to do is just system.out.print action. That's it, right? So this one in the example, I forgot to give you the easiest way, right? So remember that add action listener is the one that's associated with your Swing AWT, right? Whereas set on action is the one that is used for your FX. And then all of them, you can use E dash bracket. And then inside the bracket, you just say system.out.print line. That's fine, right? All of them you can do this way, okay? Let me show it to you, right? Using the coding example. Okay, so let's move this away. I don't like this bar is blocking. All right, okay, here we go. So say that you are creating a Swing example. Okay, let's just writing another class. Okay, Swing example. Okay, so here, if you want to define, like, let's say the button just now, right? So you will need to import, okay, Java X .swing. Okay. Dot swing dot event, for example. Okay. And then don't forget your Java event handler as well. Okay. AWT dot events. This is not accessible. I cannot mix them together, right? So it doesn't matter, right? So just to show you what you need to do. So in your code just now, if you are declaring a J button, for example, okay, let's say you have a J button. Okay, too many messages. Okay, right. So then, how do we actually attach the event handler in this case? If you, let's say you are in the main method, right? So let's say in your okay. So let's say we're just going to shortcut it, okay? Just to shortcut the thing a bit. But right, this shouldn't be written this way, okay? And remember that. So because this is already a FX app, so it doesn't actually accept all the things that we are actually using here. It says it's not accessible, right? Okay, so then you probably have to check it to become a static import, which I don't want to do, right? Then you spoil my entire IDE, right? So for this example, you would basically be doing it in a standalone, right? So then your button, instead of the set on action, then we are going to use the keyword, okay? Right, so over here, it doesn't actually show you the keyword, right? So never mind, I'm just trying to say that you can actually use the same E- method to basically produce the answer, all right? Okay, so try to have a look at the last few coding question only, right? So the coding answers only. So don't be scared by the lots of information that was given inside your examples there, because that explains about the mechanisms for event handling, right? The mechanisms for event handling for your Java string and also Java FX, they are different, right? One actually make use of okay, let's say set on action for you to set the action, and then the event handler will be added, right, by creating a new action event in this case, right? And then over here for our case of string AWT, okay, so the same applies, right? The same applies. So hopefully you get the idea, right? And then how about the rest of the questions? Let's go back to the question again. Okay. Okay. So this one, you can use the lambda expression, no problem. And in your event handler also, you can use lambda expression, okay? Remember that. Lambda expression for event handler will be accepted as well, okay? And then what else? Do you need to write the import statements in your final? For questions that maybe look like long question, especially part B, you might have to, right? Depending on whether you are declaring the entire thing. Those additional things, in case if you make wrong, if you give wrong answers, I will look at the code and I can give marks if you have, let's say, one or two definitions, such as, let's say, the import statements, right? So those are parts that allows me to give marks, right? But it's not really a must if you have already written your code in a nice way, right? But just to make it make your case stronger, so those are the parts that I can award marks. For those who doesn't know how to answer, then maybe you can just write the import statement, right? You get one mark maybe, or 2 marks, depending on how you write it. Okay, right? And then wrong import statements. Usually if it's a wrong import statements, you won't get the marks, right? Because you're importing the wrong library maybe, right? But if you're importing right library, but with let's say a bit of wrong spelling, I can still accept that, okay? But those acceptable mistakes will be like capital, small letter, right? Capital or small letter, that's fine, right? And it's no harm. Sometimes some of the libraries are actually capital, right? So if you write small letter, I will still consider that, right? And then if you can't finish the code or have error, I will mark up to the point where I can understand, right? So if I don't understand what you write below, then you don't get the marks, right? But on top, if I can still figure out which is which, then you get the marks, right? And some people will be asking whether pseudocode is acceptable or not. This is not an algorithm and data structure course, okay? Right? So pseudocode, to certain extent, if it means what you want to do, fine. Compassion marks may be awarded, like let's say 1 mark. But if you say that that is equivalent to the entire answer, then I cannot accept that as the correct answer. But marks can be awarded compassionately, right? Okay. Right, and then would there be a choice between Java FX and JPanel? We have to answer both. JFrame, right? So that depends. Okay, that depends. The question may be either or, so that's why you have to get yourself prepared for both. And in fact, you just look at the summary code. Then for event handling, of course, the part is obvious, right? I have given you the short example code on the last page, right? The last page of those the so-called study pack, right? So the last page for the event handler. And then next, okay, next part, the paper is 60%. I think I've already mentioned this, right, in the first revision. So maybe some of you have missed it, right? So it's very obvious if you look at the format, right? The format is 60%. Part A, 30%. Part B, 30%. Part A, 5 questions. Part B, 4 questions, right? Will marks be deducted if we import? Okay, again, repeating the same question, right? Will the marks be deducted? No marks will be awarded only, right? No marks will be deducted. Okay. So if you have correct answer for the import statements, you get extra marks or maybe compassionate marks depending on whether you have answered the questions correctly. If your answer is already full marks, there won't be additional bonus, right? Because that's max. Okay. But if, let's say, you wrote the statement wrongly, you will not get the marks. Okay, that's the only possibility, right? But no marks will be deducted from your existing. Okay. Yeah, lambda expression also works in Java Swing. Okay, try it, then you will be able to see how it works, right? So I might want to just show you one example shortly. Let me just grab that code and then show it to you shortly. Okay. And that's the one that I wanted to highlight to you because lambda expression is part of Java, right? Part of Java. So whatever that we have learned, lambda expression, JCF, Java Collections Framework, or even let's say your generic, all works in Java Swing, Java AWT, as well as Java FX, right? So those are standalone, independent. So the language structure will always work, right? And then it all really depends on what you want to do. Okay. All right. So any questions about that? Okay. So for Java generics, right? Okay. So for Java generic, let me just go through this one, right? Just a moment. So I guess I've actually given you the revision notes. Did I give the part on generic?
Yes, haven't given us anything about generics.
There is questions on generics here, right? But generic for coding, of course, is going to be quite hard, right? So the generic coding part, of course, you don't have to worry that much, right? So the generic coding, in fact, if you were to declare generic coding, then the most probable ones will probably be just like how to write, for example, a generic class. You have learned about that before, right? I've actually demonstrated to you how to write a generic class. So the one that we have actually learned in the tutorial, generic class, generic method, as well as generic interface. These are the 3 possible ones only, right? If you want to talk about writing code that extends, like, for example, the functionality and so on, that includes, let's say, bounded type parameters and so on. So these are not really possible questions because they are too hard, right? So a lot of times, this type of question will only be possible if, let's say, we have time to actually allow the students to answer, right? But since for our case, we have 400 students, I'm not going to give this type of questions, right? Because it is going to be time consuming to mark, and especially with a lot of writing, right? You notice that student writing, sometimes their angle bracket and their round bracket looks about the same. Okay, and how can we figure out which is which? So therefore, for generic, normally the more obvious ones will be generic class and generic methods definition. So you have learned about your OOP concepts, how to write your getter, setter, and so on, how to convert it into generic. That's all, right? So that will be the possible questions. And in fact, if you look at the, okay, we have actually given you some, okay, final exam format, right? Okay. Final exam revision. Okay. I've mentioned that, right? Right. So 5 questions, 4 questions. These are all mentioned in the first last week, okay? And then the type of questions that can actually be asked will be as shown, right? And have I actually concentrated on generic? No, right? For part B, coding, right? So generic method, generic interface. So those are the ones that are possible only, right? Up to here. So that's just to shorten your study a bit, okay? Only here, up to here only. All right. Okay. And then for binary, of course, binary file, RF, IO streams. Look at tutorial 8 and 9. Okay. These are the ones that I've actually mentioned before, right? And then Java collections framework. Usually it will be iterating using for, advanced for, or iterator class, or you can even use for each. I'm okay with that. All right. So as long as you are able to iterate the elements and so on, so that means you are actually learning how to use the collections framework effectively, right? And then for exception handling, the common ones will be try, catch, finally, tribal resources, and multiple exception or multiple throws, right? And then event handling, of course, for FX and for string AWT, the format looks about a bit quite similar, right? So you just need to actually add that, okay, set, like for example, on set on actions for FX, okay? And then your add action listener, right? Right. So those are the ones that you need to know, right? Okay. Okay, and then the part on theory, I think we more or less have already given you some of the possible coverage, right? So please look at this, right? And for generic, of course, I won't be able to cover the last 2 because it's too hard for you guys, right? It's too hard for you guys, and hence, most likely, you'll just be covering the generic class or generic methods only, right? Okay. Right. Any questions so far? Right. Let me check the Q&A again. Provide you guys with a mock exam. Okay. There's no similar questions like this year because last year's questions are even harder than this year's questions, right? So the last year's questions are basically longer. They are 100%, right? So, and then it will probably scare you a bit, right? If you look at last year's question, but this year's questions, they are much easier, straightforward. And because we are short of time and there are more students to mark, so therefore the question will be straightforward, okay? Okay. And then the theory questions, of course, I have already published inside your final exam section, okay? Right, so part A and part B, in fact, I've already shown you the format, right? So the summary table is actually given, right? And then the so-called programming part, right? We are just going to focus on some of those important aspects that you need to know, right? It will not go beyond what you are supposed to know because it won't be fair, number one. Number two, of course, due to time constraint, I guess that's the best we can do, right? Okay. So remember, part A and B, theory and the practical questions, they are covered. Okay, part A will be theory, part B will be practical. Right, the theory questions, of course, you can refer to the study pack. I think it's more than sufficient, right? So examples are given there and so on. All right. Okay. And there might be tracing questions, like in the theory, right? That asks you to trace a program's execution. Like for example, you may have seen this in your lecture slides, right? In your textbooks lecture slides, how to trace the try catch, right? The exception handling, right? So you trace the execution, like let's say inside a try, if something happens, it jumps to the catch, right? And then those lines below the try will not be executed. It jumps to the catch and then it goes to the finally. And then if there are additional code below the try catch block, it will execute that as well, right? Okay. Right. It's not to say that we don't want to give you a mock exam question, but because it's different from last year, right? So the question is definitely different from last year. So if I were to give you the previous exam also, it won't be fair. And then you'll be practicing something that will scare you too much, right? Because what they need to do is more than what you're supposed to do here, right? In your final for this year, of course, we try to make it easier for you guys, right? Okay. So last year is 100%. Here, this year, your question paper is only 60%, right? So lesser questions, and then you are given more time, as well as the question requirement is slightly lower a bit as compared to last year. Last year, the question requirements are a bit high, right? Okay, any questions so far? Right, so there's a recording for this part. Hopefully that will help you on the study. So it's now 8:54. If you have any questions, feel free to ask or just drop a line inside your WhatsApp group. Okay, and then I'll record this part. Okay, I will stop the video first to compile the recording, and then you can basically get the